I'm going to show you the condition of one of the turbos that came off of the TV show Street Outlaws. It came off one of the vehicles that was on that show. It's a 6-liter gas motor with twin precision turbos, 6766s. So I'm going to show you in detail what happened to those. This was a thrust bearing that was in it, and this is mainly the problem here. This collar broke, and so what I thought was interesting is the way that this was installed in here was not the correct way, or if it was installed correctly, then the pins that hold this in place was completely sheared off. What you're looking at here is the main problem with precision turbos. The issue is when they use this steel bearing and then use a steel collar and a steel spacer, they always just have problems. It's just metal on metal contact. If you replace the steel piece here with a brass or copper bar one, then it completely fixes that problem, and you don't have to worry about the turbo going bad every 2,000 miles. When the turbo goes bad like it did in this case, it develops a lot of axle play, or in and out shaft play is usually what I call it. They can start to wear on this piece. Sometimes it can wear out the diameter of this piece here if it develops a lot of side-to-side play. You could tell by looking at it that this was rebuilt before, and these turbos were probably purchased brand new from the guy that had them on this vehicle originally. My theory of what happened here is the guy put brand new turbos on his vehicle, and then he had a problem out of them, so he sent them to somebody to get rebuilt. They put the same parts that had the problem back in the turbo, brand new of everything, and it had the same problem again, and he probably just got frustrated and decided to sell the car because he probably just couldn't figure it out what the problem was. The problem is this piece. If you replace that with the pieces I mentioned earlier, then it will completely fix this problem and it'll never have this issue again. The thing that I think is interesting though is if you look here, so this is held in by, it's supposed to be 2 pins here, one there and one there, and the thrust bearing sits on top of that, and then this piece sits down on top of the bearing to hold it in place. But there's a couple different versions of this piece, but this piece does not require screws to hold down the bearing. It's an either or thing. So if you have a plate that's not like this one, then you could have it hold the bearing down by screws, or it could have this ring in the plate where it's not this design, but like it's just like more open, and it has this ring like a gear looking thing that holds the thrust bearing down without screws. But this, the way this was done, this bearing right here, because it didn't have pins to hold it in place and no screws, it would be able to move just like that in the turbo, which wouldn't make any sense. But that's not really why this turbo went bad. Like I mentioned before, it's because that piece is just steel, so it causes a lot of problems that way. The bearing housing is completely ruined because of the shaft play though, because the rear seal is not going to go back in there. This piece can be saved if the person wanted to have the back of it machined and then sleeved, then remachined. It could be fixed. But I think the bearing seats are probably a little bit too worn for my liking, so I think I would just throw this piece away. I've since already repaired this turbo, but the guy bought another new turbo, so he's going to have one that's correct, or one that's permanently fixed, and the other one that's going to have a problem again. If you want the rebuild kit to be able to just end all be all fix the problem so you'll never have to deal with this type of issue again, I'll link to that in the description box.